If you read the introduction to the book, it will change your life. Can I tell you that between the months of August when he said that and January of 2024, August 2023 to January 2024, my life 10x'd. Investments, businesses, self-esteem, relationships, people, flow just exploded in my life. It happened to me. And I don't know where you're sitting today, if it's addiction problems, if it's self-esteem, self-worth, worry, debt, depression, ADD, ADHD, whatever it might be. If you'll follow the path of I am, I will promise you your self-esteem and life will be better.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, to all of my friends, associates, and business partners around the world. We have our second podcast in Pillars of Personal Development here for you today, and I've got something really special. I would say one of my closest associates in business over the last 34 years we've known each other, Dan, and it's so good to have you here. I want to kind of start off with a story of how I met you. And I'll tell you a little bit about Dan in just a moment, but I was in Palm Springs in 1993, the summer of 93. I'd been, 3 years as an entrepreneur in business. And I went to this event, and I'm standing at the back of the event. There's about, 700 plus people there. And I remember you being on stage. You were the top earner of that particular company, and you did your 60-second testimonial. And I'll never forget, at that moment, I said, I want to copy that guy. I want to learn from him. And here we are 34 years later, about to do a podcast, and it is awesome. And there's been a lot of things that have happened over 34 years. So let me introduce you to my good friend, Dan McCormick. Dan, father, grandfather, mentor, coach, author, and of course your new book, Affirm I Am. And what can I say? Extraordinary leader at all levels. So Dan, maybe you could share with us a little bit of how did you get started? Because there's a lot of people watching who are, on their journey, on their path in the early stages, and they want to know how to build a great life.
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, congratulations. I mean, Pillars of Personal Development, that is a high and holy calling. That's an amazing title. That kind of sets the stage for anyone that's going to listen today, 6 months, 6 years from now. We can look at what are those pillars, and hopefully we'll be able to tap into some of those here today. David, your audience and some of us will overlap in our stories and whatnot, but without a doubt, that was an amazing meeting in Palm Springs, California. That was unbelievable that I had the opportunity to meet you. I remember that. I felt that. I can feel it. I can still taste it. It was a energizing time in my life, for sure. However, just a few years prior to that, let's call it 10, 15 years prior to that, life wasn't so easy for me. You asked me about my background. I don't know where the audience is today, but I struggled with what people call ADD, ADHD. I had anxiety. I had fear. I had probably comparison problems. I had many different issues, if you will.
Me too.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of seems like we need to dig ourselves out of something to go where we want to go, right? Lo and behold, I couldn't read. You put a book in front of me, you put a test in front of me, it was a guaranteed failure unless I could borrow from the notes next to me or in front of me or behind me, or I had some kind of luck, if you will. But I probably read 1 to 2 books in my entire school history. And I finished high school, and I'd worked in a tennis club. I was making $2.35 an hour as a young teenager, grew that to $3.65 5-6 years later. And a member of that club walked up to me, David, violated my own airspace. You know how when people kind of get so close to you that it's almost uncomfortable? And this gentleman did that, had hair down to here, was this physique of wow. One of the best tennis players in Hawaii and the Pacific Northwest at the time, had a tennis court construction company. He called me Dano, like you do sometimes, and he said, Dano, word for word, I need a laborer this summer. I'll pay you $5 an hour. And I will never forget that feeling. Nobody ever gave me a raise. My raises went up a quarter at a time. This was $3.65 to $5 an hour. I learned from this individual, David, integrity matters. He always built the best tennis courts. He always gave the most honest bid. He always delivered better than what he could possibly, the expectation of the country club we were working at, the school we were building for, the private mansions that we were building for, to put a tennis court in. Now, of course, everybody does pickleball courts. But the fact of the matter is, I learned from this individual and his partner. They were incredible to me. I will never forget Don and Al. Now, here's what happened. I went off to Washington State University at the end of that summer. I was going to play on the tennis team. And I always ask audiences, how many of you had a college experience, as you know? And a lot of people raise their hands and nod their heads and say yes. How many finished college? Well, I finished in 2 weeks. Now, what most people would refer to that historically as dropping out. But for me, I was finished. And the reason I was finished is because there was no chance. I had recurring tendonitis in my knees. But opening up that economics book, opening up those study manuals, David, no matter how long, no matter how hard I tried, it was excruciatingly painful.
Isn't that interesting? I have the same story. I mean, I finished grade 12 just barely, and I was just not someone to go on to college and university.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I know we're recording this for good reason.
Yeah.
Because people are watching today are going to have the same problems years from now and years from now, so long as we don't learn how to get the focus. And so I went to, I dropped out after 2 weeks. I got a reckless driving ticket driving home. My boss says to me, he says, look, I'll pay your ticket. You come do some odd jobs for me during the winter. Come back to work next summer. I'll pay you $6 an hour. And so I kind of thought that was my journey. I was going to be a laborer. I was going to build tennis courts. I was going to hang out with my friends, string tennis rackets, work in tennis clubs. I thought I was going to be a tennis court guy. And then August of 1982, just almost exactly to my anniversary when we're filming this today, that ad in the newspaper, which in those days is the Facebook and the Instagram of the day, right? Mm-hmm. The ad said, "Are you making what you're worth?" I live in Beverly Hills. I drive a clamor. I made $96,000 in the health and nutrition industry, supervisory positions available. And I thought to myself, ooh, wow. Oh, my mind is exploding. But I didn't call the ad. I literally thought there's no way I would qualify. There's no way I'd have what they're looking for. But I saw the ad again on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now, the trick in advertising back in the day, it was cheaper to run a 4-day ad than a 1-day ad. The Sunday paper, the Toronto Star, the Seattle Times, those are the biggest papers. But the deal was 4 days. I looked at my mom on the 4th day. I said, Mom, they must be desperate. The ad is still in the paper. Talk about naivety, right?
Yeah.
So lo and behold, I called the ad. It was an answering service. Somebody called me back, and Dennis said this. And Dennis was from Thunder Bay, Ontario. Had that big Thunder Bay accent. And he says, Dan, you called on our ad. Can you tell me about your business background? I build tennis courts, string tennis rackets, work in a tennis club, all the things tennis. I said, if it's legal, I just want to know about it. And he said, look, why don't you come to meet me tomorrow at the Greenwood Inn, Northeast 8th, Bellevue, Washington, 11 a.m. I put on my best tennis shirt. I had hair down to here. I had my topsiders on, my nicest jeans, and I go to my first business meeting one-on-one, David. And you remember the old days, right? It's the flip chart. He gets his flip chart and he starts going through the charts and telling me stories. And who is he telling me stories of? People my age. He liked to mirror and match the way Tony Robbins would teach us. Of course, Jim Rohn taught that. We always mirrored and matched. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. I sat with him for 45 minutes or an hour, ran home, or I drove home, called my mom, and I said, Mom, we're going to a meeting tomorrow night. Now, here's where life got interesting. Go to my first meeting, 30 people, probably similar to you. Go to your first meeting, small, and lo and behold, this meeting had my mom and I sitting in the first two seats, front and center. It was speaking to me. If there was a way to measure adrenaline, it was over the moon. No drug could have given me that adrenaline high. I was extremely in the moment. Meeting was over. We walk out. This gentleman, Dennis, opens his trunk and he says, how much product do you want? And I buy $436 because that was the biggest discount. My mom's sitting next to me. She says, son, do you know what you're doing? I said, Mom, are you kidding me? Everybody's going to want this, right? I'm 19 years old. And then his sponsor walks up and he says, can I tell you a story? I picked up this book just 90 days ago, and he met a lady named Marilyn. Marilyn was his sponsor. And he read this book. He told the kids that he would, if they would allow him to sell the 10-speed bikes and the color TV, that he would take them to Hawaii for Christmas. He made $75,000 his first 90 days. This book, I didn't start reading for like a few months later. And David, the promise that Og Mandino gives you at the beginning of the journalized version, which is called The Greatest Secret in the World, the promise is 75 to 1 odds you won't do it first. But if you do, you'll likely double or triple your income in the next year.
So, Dan, that story is where it all began with us. We have never worked together directly, in terms of having a financial connection. But you have impacted my life, and thus, I estimate over the course of 34 years, roughly 2 million people that have been through the organizations over time. And you know what? One of the first books that I actually read that I really focused was The Greatest Secret in the World. Right? I still have the book. You can see how yellow the pages are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is from 1993 when you shared that with me.
Wow.
And that, and I think if someone could, take something from what that story you just told, it was you had the faith to step out of your comfort zone and do something blind, which was answer an ad, whether it's, an ad in a newspaper or today on social media or Facebook or wherever. You stepped out and went forward, and a whole new universe opened up.
Well, what's interesting about that, too, is that it didn't work for me the first time I read it. I'm 19, it didn't jive, and I finally clicked into me. Marilyn, Larry's sponsor that showed me the book, is now my wife. She was my wife 8 months later, and here we are 40-plus years later with 14 grandkids, 15th one on the way.
Yeah.
And here you and I are with this combined millions of people that we've impacted in somehow, some way. And yet, both of us are more excited about our future than anything we've ever done. You're taking on the pillars of personal development. I've got the new book. We're talking about how do we connect, how do we build, how do we lead, how do we love. And David, it happened with the attitude of 40 years of waking up to the idea that I will greet this day with love in my heart. And then there was a scroll number 4, that said, I am. And Og didn't write affirmations. He wrote scrolls. But that affirmation to me was, I am nature's greatest miracle. Now, what's so fascinating about that is I means exist, am means with God. So if you take the words I am, what follows I am follows you. And so that's where it kind of transitioned for me 2 years ago, from sitting at a dead stall in my life, complete plateau, frustration, disappointment, selfishness. Nobody on the outside might have said that, but I was feeling that on the inside. And lo and behold, a moment in time happened. When I was sitting here at my favorite place in the world in Lake Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, had a trip scheduled to Utah with an 8-year-old granddaughter getting baptized, with a convention at hand, and I told my wife I didn't want to go. And she looked at me and she said, "You're going." Whoa, okay, you're going. It's your granddaughter, it's your company, it's your business, whatever, right? And I walked into that convention, David, sheepishly. It's my 40 years of conventions. I mean, what's left to be seen?
Right.
A lot. Because I walked in and on that counter was the Miracle Morning Book along with a journal. And I said, "How much?" And she said, $50. I Venmo'd the $50. I came home from that convention. I turned on the TV because I said to my wife, I said Sunday night, almost 2 years ago exactly, I said, "You know what? Let's watch the documentary." And we laid in bed and watched that documentary, and I just felt, this is the real deal. This isn't a book with an F-bomb on the cover. This is about a guy's life who changed at the very core of his being because he had that head-on collision, pronounced dead, 11 broken bones, permanent brain damage, all those things. And I'm reading, David, the first 20, 25, 30 pages, and I don't always buy a book. My wife teases me because I buy so many books, but there might be just a word or a phrase that I need out of that book. I don't have to agree with the author on everything in that book, but the first 30 pages, I saw the greatest acronym in self-help history. The SAVERS: silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. First, I have the greatest set of scrolls. Now I have the greatest acronym in self-help history. And David, my life, that moment in time, exploded off the plateau. The seed was planted. The soil was ripe. The harvest was ready to come. I needed to put in the work, and my life began to explode like nothing I've ever been. I've never been this excited. And this adrenaline that I have is 5 a.m. every day. I know that's a little early for you, but I like it.
Well, let me tell you how that has affected me. Okay? So I've had an awesome career. And by the way, thanks to you for the introductions that you made along the way for me that opened doors that I could never have opened. But I had reached a plateau also. I'll be 62 this year. And since COVID, I was flat. I just didn't know what's next. And we had this conversation, I guess, 6 months ago, roughly?
Yep, exactly.
And you told me about this Affirm I Am podcast to listen to each day. And you said, most people won't do it. They simply won't do it. I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And so I did it. I missed a few days, okay, but I was pretty diligent. And I started listening to this thing every morning, and I did it while lying in bed. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, a whole new universe has opened up. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna step out, and go to the next level. And so I started these podcasts and pillars of personal development. And so here we are. And thank you. So you've had an effect that you don't know yet where it's going to lead.
Yeah. It's true for both of us, really. I mean, we both are stepping into places we've never been. Mm-hmm. The one thing that is intriguing about that journey for both of us is, let's just say that Bob Proctor, who you interviewed, his widower, right? Just, a couple weeks ago. And Bob would never go anywhere without Think and Grow Rich. Oh. You and I would never go anywhere without Og and The Greatest Salesman. But here's my takeaway from that. My takeaway is, what got me here won't get me there. So I had to get something new to shift the paradigm that I can do more. I truly know in my heart of hearts that I will greet this day with love in my heart. I know that I am nature's greatest miracle. I know that all of these scrolls got me here.
And so this is all about this next generation. These young people in their 20s starting to put their life together in their 30s and some in their 40s. How does this fit into the new generation? Does it still apply? At what level does it apply?
Oh, let's open up this box right now. Let's go deep on this, because let's ask the question to the audience. Young people, our age, etc. One question: do words matter? I think Napoleon Hill would say yes. Yeah. The Bible would say, even Proverbs 25:11, I believe, says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. Whoa, right? Og learned a lot of what he knew from W. Clement Stone, from Ben Franklin, all of these things, right? And then, lo and behold, I have this idea. My wife has Stephen Covey as a professor in college, so I learned the 7 Habits at a very deep level. After I go to that convention, I get this book, and I say to myself, why don't I take this negativity in the world and let's turn it into the most positive, optimistic thing I can do? What can I do to be part of the solution for those young people? Watch this. The world is stuck in the plateau that you and I were talking about because the world knows this all too well. Now, if you're going to wake up tomorrow morning or this morning when you woke up and you saw this podcast and you turn to this first, the rabbit hole is open. Comparison, doubt, right? Anxiety, ADD, ADHD, all of the fears that are possible in the world. And so what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a phrase to everybody right now on your podcast. Flow before phone is scientifically proven. Flow before phone. A lady that had the same issue you had just the other day, David, she heard me say flow before phone. She had been listening to that 18-minute affirmation video that you can get on my website. We'll go through that at affirmim.com. You get that for free. You get the first chapter of the book for free. But the book is actually called Awakening Who I Am. The book is actually subtitled The 2 Words to Ignite Your Personal Transformation. Well, if you're talking about pillars of personal development, you've got to become a master of those 2 words. Yeah. You've got to become a master of flow. And you do that 18-minute affirmation video before anything else.
Because it's kind of aligning your thought process and thus how you're perceiving the world. And we often say that, thoughts are things, right? Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. We create our reality by our thoughts, and we can speak that into existence.
Well, let's look at the science of that, okay? So in that, now, scientists didn't know this years ago, but Napoleon Hill knew it, right? The auto-suggestion of thoughts. Thoughts are things. Jim Rohn, thoughts are things. What you think about, you bring about. How can you become what you're not thinking about? So watch this. The brain now, we know scientifically, the brain creates new baby nerve cells while you and I are sleeping at night. That's why it's really important to find flow, know how to get to sleep on time, know what your rhythm is. We'll talk more about that later. But watch this. Neurogenesis, baby nerve cells are born. What's the first thing the world does? What's the first thing your mother and father did when you watched them wake up in the morning? What did they do first? Cup of coffee? Newspaper? Cigarette. That's what my mom did. That's what I watched every day of my life.
Actually, come to think of it, my dad did smoke. It's been a long time, right? He passed back in 76. I was 13.
Wow.
But he did, yes, he did smoke. And I think he drank coffee. Certainly the newspaper.
So now, change that whole paradigm. You want to change your life in 24 hours? Change your life radically off the plateau in 7 days? You go all in on taking that 18 minutes. And why is 18 magical? It's the average length of a TED Talk. What does 18 mean in Hebrew? Life. 18 is significant. We're going to take 18 minutes to get ready for our life, to program the brain. I mean, you and I have played golf before. 18 holes of golf, 18 is 1% of the day. If you invest 1% of your day, or some call it the rule of 100 over the course of a year, you're going to radically move off the plateau of your life. You're going to radically eradicate.
Changes absolutely everything.
It's staggering, isn't it? I'm fired up.
You know, I didn't think about it that way as you've broken it down into the bite-sized pieces, but there's no question about it. The same thing, okay, a bigger concept with Augmandino and Think and Grow Rich. I mean, I've got my old audio cassettes.
Yes,
I don't have a cassette player to play them on, but all of it is based on thought. All of it.
Yes. And look at all of those things that we've already talked about, and then say to yourself, what if the first thought of your morning is, I am nature's greatest? In my book, we have what we call a co-creator page. When you open the book, we're going to ask you to sign the front page.
Yep.
As the co-creator to the book, Dan McCormick and Ken Shelton. Ken is the one that wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for Covey. So we have the 7 key affirmations, and that starts off with, I am a creator. Yeah. What am I creating? My wife creates memories. You and I, we create relationships. We create businesses. We create opportunities. We create places for people to grow. We create all kinds of attitudes. We are powerful beyond our massive comprehension of what we can create and how we can contribute, serve, and love.
And so when we can coach, mentor, and help people create new habits so that their smartphone becomes secondary or third after getting themselves into the flow, into the focus, they're going to have a much different experience even on social media, even meeting people or speaking to people via their phone.
The phone is
or anything
your
else
best
for that
friend.
matter.
Yeah. So let's look at the phone for a minute. Number one, I am a creator. You can listen to it. I mean, I can cue it up on YouTube, on my TV, lay in bed and do it. I can put my headsets in, walk in the beach and ground and listen to it. You can put it, when you go to our website at affirmiam.com and you put your email in there, we can give you the link on Vimeo so it's commercial free. But watch what happens with affirmation number 2. Number 1 is I am a creator. Number 2 is I am intentional. Look what changes if you let this lead your day or you choose to lead the day. Now, I like to say that I have an intent to repent, because if I go a day doing this first, I need to repent. To me.
So Dan, when you say intentional, you mean you're not on autopilot. You're actually conscious of what you're going to do, why you're going to do it.
Yeah, what you're going to create, what you're going to allow the universe to inspire you with, like inspiration for the intention for sure. And then the third affirmation is I am present. Got a fun story in the book. A lady that I interviewed, top. I mean, we're talking superb producer, 7 figures a year, off the charts. And she thought, in her own words, that walking into a bookstore and walking into the self-help section, to think about buying a Tony Robbins book, that's the weird people, right? And she had to go through the humbling process before she could come to the idea and say, I am present. I am prioritizing. She felt this self-consciousness of guilt while the headset was in and the team member was calling, but the kids were in the back seat. So she learned to take the earbuds out and be present for her kids. Now watch what happens here if we want to say, I am present. The history of psychology might look at, how do we look at our present? Well, one way to do it is to look at our past. And so when we look at our past, we fall into comparison mode. We fall into what failed me there, my relationship, my investment, my school, in my case, et cetera, right? But watch what happens if you take your present and all of a sudden now you listen to that 18 minutes, you get your copy, you go to the masterclass with me, and all of a sudden you make your future so big. You write it out. You're crystal clear. I am serving, loving, contributing, creating. I am a magnet for miracles. You make your future bigger on pillars for personal development, for awakening who I am. When you make your future bigger, you make your present better.
And that is going to change the world. Lift everybody, empower, inspire, move people to another level, a different focus.
So as you can see, I'm a little amped up on this because I've seen it work in my life, your life. And the gal that just called me the other day and she said, look, when I said flow before phone, she could never get through the 18 minutes. She did phone first and always struggled to get to the 18 minutes. I said flow before phone. She said, Dan, this was the biggest game changer of my life, to flow before phone. Your life will change. And then you take those two words to ignite your transformation. Then you say, what follows I am follows you. I have over 100 different I am affirmations in one of my journals. We're creating a coin. The coin, as you know, when someone goes to an AA meeting and they're sober for a day, what do they get?
They get a newcomer chip.
They get a newcomer chip. If they're sober for a month, what do they get?
30 days.
And then a year, or 6 months and a year, and then 2 years.
6
and then
months, 1 year, 2 years, and so on.
And I create a coin because I want you to feel. We want to take, at the end of the book, we actually go through 7 levels of affirmations. And we want to stack all of those. It'd be one thing if you and I read the first scroll. Now, maybe you knew it, but I didn't know it. When Og wrote this book, he wrote it as an addict, right? He was an alcoholic. So when he writes, today I begin a new life, well, that coincides beautifully with AA or any addiction recovery program. I wanted to create the chip that I could have the feeling with me every time I put my hand in my pocket. So we've got the coin coming out that has all 7 affirmations on one side, and on the other side, I am a magnet for miracles. I think, David, that the world, in all of its negativity right now, if we could get the world, young people, old people, any people, to say I am a magnet for miracles and become aware of the consciousness of what will allow that to happen in your life. When you seek and expect miracles, you'll find them.
Where do people go to plug into your masterclass and into Affirm I Am? So affirmiam.com.
AffirmIam.com. That's AffirmIam.com. You guys can put it in the show notes if you want. And they can pre-order the book there. They can pre-order the coin there. Mm-hmm. But we do a free masterclass once a month. Now think about this. If 18 minutes every morning can be that 1% of your day, if we could take 30 to 45 minutes once a month to reaffirm with a bigger audience and get more ideas on how it can be so life-changing for you, like we're not here to write a book. We're not here to do a show to make a buck. We're here to change a life. We're here to find the next Dan, the next David, the next whoever that is looking to get off that plateau and rocket in this exponential growth curve in their life, in their self-help category, which if they do that, as you and I know, that's the compensation plan on a mission, right? When you tackle that personal development, you know that your paycheck is the equivalent of your self-esteem, self-worth.
For those of you who are watching this, wherever you're watching this from, there's a lot of history here with Dan and I. And Dan, you will recognize this.
Oh my, yes, okay? I do.
Inside this journal from 1993, I took a lot of notes in the early days when I was in my early 30s. Oh, you got one too. And
I have literally 3 journals right here. I mean, I got 3 of them.
I have a couple, but that's my first. That's my first journal. And the notes that I took in there and the components that I studied and then started to teach to pass on to other people was completely life transformational. I couldn't have imagined where it would send me. And so for those of you who are watching this, if you're looking for a path, if you're looking for a coach, a mentor, you're looking for guidance to take you to the next level, then go to Affirm I Am. And take a look at Dan's material. You're going to love it. Dan, any closing thoughts for this next generation?
I would like to say that, the law of manifestation is a big topic in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're really doing is we're putting that mind in a space to where you can manifest, you can attract. And so I want to just tell you the sequence that happened for me. So first, I bought the book to get off the plateau. I didn't know it was going to do it. I watched the documentary, and I said, who knows how? I meet Hal. Hal writes the foreword to my book, and Hal becomes a good friend. We're just texting yesterday. Then I said a year ago this month, I said, Hal, this month we have a book club in one of my businesses, and the book happens to be 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And I said, can you introduce me to Dr. Ben? He introduces me to Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben says, Dan, if you read the introduction to the book, it will change your life. Can I tell you that between the months of August when he said that and January of 2024, August 2023 to January 2024, my life 10x'd. Investments, businesses, self-esteem, relationships, people, flow just exploded in my life. It happened to me. And I don't know where you're sitting today, if it's addiction problems, if it's self-esteem, self-worth, worry, debt, depression, ADD, ADHD, whatever it might be. If you'll follow the path of I am, I will promise you your self-esteem and life will be better.
Dan, I want to thank you for a fantastic, just a fantastic basket of wisdom here for people. I hope people took notes because what I've gained from you over the last 34 years continues to change my life.
Can I share one word in closing?
Yeah.
In the book, because you just said that, in the book I used the word Ubuntu, which is an African proverb, African mantra, if you will, which means I am because of you. You know, you say that about me, but I am because of you. You are because of me. And so it works both ways. It's a new way for people to look at taking a compliment instead of being self-deprecating and say, oh, well, no, this, no. Let's raise the bar together. Let's get out of the idea of self-deprecating and self-doubt, and let's go to higher ground. And I just say Ubuntu, my friend.
And thank you, sir.
Thank you. God bless everybody.